My boyfriend was the top scorer in the college entrance exam, yet he applied to a low-tier vocational school. I convinced him to change his application to Stanford's computer science program. After graduation, we made millions a year, and our married life was happy. But on the day his white moonlight got married, he grabbed a computer tower and smashed my leg. If it weren't for you stopping me, I could have gone to the same university as Lily. I should have been the one to marry her. It turned out he had resented me all these years for persuading him to change his application. In front of our child, I was beaten to death. When I opened my eyes again, I had been reborn. I looked at the computer screen and saw that my boyfriend had filled in every choice with the same low-tier vocational school that his white moonlight had applied to. He turned his head and smiled at me. "Baby, how do you think my choices look?" Hearing his words, I instinctively shuddered and clutched my right leg, the one he had broken in my past life. "Don't hit me." In my previous life, on the day his white moonlight got married, Ryan's handsome face twisted with rage, his eyes red as he stormed into the study. Ignoring the fact that I was in the middle of a remote meeting, he grabbed a computer tower and smashed my right leg. Hundreds of my colleagues, watching the online meeting, witnessed the assault and let out horrified cries. Our child ran into the room to protect me, only to be kicked away by him. That small body was flung across the room. In the chaotic study, as my life was slipping away, I lay in a pool of blood, completely dazed. "Why, Ryan, why are you doing this?" He slammed the computer tower against my head with brutal force. Blood splattered like snowflakes. Before I died, I heard his gritted words. "It's all because you made me change my application. Otherwise, I could have gone to the same university as Lily. I should have been the one to marry her." So all this time he had been holding a grudge over that. He said that if I hadn't convinced him to change his application, he might have ended up with his white moonlight. How ridiculous. My life, our child's life, none of it mattered compared to a wedding invitation from his white moonlight. Inside the cramped internet cafe, Ryan's voice pulled me back to reality. "Baby, how do you think my choices look?" he asked again. I looked at the glowing computer screen. Every field had been filled with the literature department of that same low-tier vocational school. I blinked and lowered my gaze without emotion. "Oh, looks good, Ryan. This time you shouldn't have any reason to resent me, right?" Hearing my response, Ryan paused for a moment, his gaze scrutinizing me. "Baby, do you really think my choices are good?" I stared at him steadily. "Don't ask for my opinion. This is your decision to make." Ryan hesitated for a few seconds before shifting his gaze away. His fingers, hovering over the mouse, trembled slightly. "Maybe I should fill out a few more choices?" "Huh?" I couldn't help but sneer inwardly. So he knew deep down that applying to a no-name college despite being a top scorer was a waste. In my past life, I had earnestly pleaded with him, asking how he could throw away 18 years of hard work by choosing such a meaningless school. I thought I had convinced him. Now I realized he had only gone along with it for convenience. In the end, he blamed me for making him change his decision, so much so that he personally killed me. Suddenly, his phone rang sharply. He glanced at me cautiously before answering. "Hello, Lily?" It was his white moonlight. "Lily, the school's top student. Where did you apply? When school starts, can I come visit you?" Lily's voice was bright and crisp, with a playful lilt at the end. She was the queen bee of the school, dyed hair, manicured nails, yet she had an innocent-looking face. Every day after school, different men on motorcycles would wait for her, taking her out for street racing and fights. The moment he heard Lily's voice, Ryan's expression softened. "My application. I filled in. But it's a secret for now. I'll give you a surprise later." As he spoke, Ryan finally made up his mind and clicked the mouse. The screen displayed a confirmation message. "Are you sure you want to submit your application? Once submitted, it cannot be changed." He pressed confirm. The page loaded for a few seconds before displaying the submission successful message. The grayed-out screen meant the application was now locked and uneditable. While he was on the phone, my gaze also fell on my own computer screen. My scores weren't as high as Ryan's, but I still ranked among the top students in the state. In my past life, my first choice application had been Stanford's computer science program. However, I missed the cutoff by just one rank. and that one missed spot had haunted me for years. Just one rank. I couldn't accept it. But this time, if Ryan wasn't applying to Stanford's computer science program anymore, did that mean I could take that spot instead? If so, could I finally get into Stanford? After filling out my applications, I saw that Ryan had finished his call. Without hesitation, I looked at him and said, "Ryan, let's break up." Ryan and I had grown up as childhood neighbors, and I had always thought I understood him. But it wasn't until the moment of my death in my past life that I realized his white moonlight had always been Lily. The only reason he married me was because his mother wanted our family's money. Now that I had a second chance, I only wanted to stay as far away from him as possible. Ryan's eyes widened in disbelief. "You're willing to break up with me?" From his perspective, I had harbored feelings for him for years. I was the one who confessed first, always following him around like a devoted puppy. How could I possibly be the one to leave? I remained firm. "Well then, I guess this is the end for us." Under Ryan's stunned gaze, I picked up my bag and walked away decisively. As I stepped further, his angry roar echoed behind me. "Rainey, you'll regret this." No, he was the one who would regret it. In the following days, I started preparing for my future. I searched for online computer science projects to work on in advance. In my previous life, I had spent my college years just like most people, wasting time, drifting along aimlessly. When I graduated, I ended up in a small company with a miserable salary, working overtime constantly, and enduring an unbearable boss. It wasn't until then that I finally woke up and started grinding through coding problems, fixing my resume and switching jobs multiple times until I finally landed a position at the big tech company where Ryan worked. My salary eventually doubled, but I had wasted so much time. This time, I wouldn't take any detours. I would plan my life properly. For the next few days after submitting his application, Ryan's family was basking in their glory. His father had no idea his son had applied to a low-tier vocational school. Every day, he proudly bragged to the entire neighborhood, reminding everyone that Ryan was the state's top scorer. Since many students in our neighborhood had also taken the college entrance exam that year, Ryan's mother took particular pleasure in mocking the parents of those who didn't do well. How could someone not even get into a top-tier university? Are they brainless? Maybe you should take them to a doctor for a checkup. Whenever she saw me and my parents, she would lift her chin and sneer. "Rainey, how many points did you get?" "Not as high as my son's, right? I'm telling you, boys are just naturally smarter than girls." My dad was about to explode in anger, ready to argue, but I grabbed his arm and held him back. Instead, I casually replied, Yes, Auntie, whatever you say is right." When we got home, I reassured my parents, "There's no need to waste our energy on people like them. Just wait. They'll bring ruin upon themselves soon enough." Sure enough, the very next day, Ryan brought Lily home. "Mom, Dad, this is my girlfriend." Ryan's parents turned their heads, only to see Lily standing at the door in high heels, wearing black stockings, dark smoky eye makeup, and holding a cigarette between her fingers. They nearly fainted on the spot. Ryan immediately stepped in front of Lily protectively. "I really love her, and I hope you can accept her." Ryan's mother clutched her chest in disbelief. "You want to be with this indecent little fox?" Then she gritted her teeth. At least Rainey had 5 houses under her name. But Ryan remained firm. "Rainey doesn't even compare to Lily. You don't understand. In this life, Lily is the only person I'll ever love." Ryan's mother clutched her chest in frustration, nearly hyperventilating. "You're still young. What do you mean you've already made up your mind about her?" "So what if I'm young? This is the first time I've ever liked someone this much." Ryan took a deep breath, his expression firm. "I've listened to you my entire life, doing everything the way you wanted. Can't you let me make at least one decision for myself?" The tension in the room was palpable as they stood off against each other. At that moment, a delivery worker stepped out of the elevator, holding a package. "Package for 601. Ryan's mother took it and quickly tore it open. The words on the document inside made her vision go dark. State Vocational and Technical College. She staggered, barely able to hold onto the paper. When the realization fully sank in, her eyes rolled back, and she fainted on the spot. When she regained consciousness, This usually dignified woman in her 50s, who always prided herself on her sophistication, began wailing uncontrollably. You unfilial son. Have you lost your mind? You didn't apply to Stanford, you applied to some low-tier vocational school? Her chest heaved violently as she clutched the paper in her trembling hands. Ryan, are you trying to kill me? Ryan's father crouched on the floor, silently smoking a cigarette, his brows furrowed deeply. Meanwhile, Ryan's mother sobbed, hitting her son over and over again. The commotion attracted the attention of the neighbors, who peeked through the cracks of their doors, eagerly watching the drama unfold. Didn't Stanford and Harvard both call to recruit you? Why on earth would you apply to a community college instead? Ryan's mother shouted in disbelief. Her fury only grew as she turned abruptly and slapped Lily twice. It's this little vixen, isn't it? She's the one who ruined you. I will never accept this. You are breaking up with her right now. At that moment, I happened to return home with my parents, only to witness the chaotic scene. The moment Ryan's mother saw me, she stormed over and shoved me to the ground. Rainey, you were with him when he filled out his application at the internet cafe, weren't you? How could you just stand there and let him ruin his future? My mother immediately helped me up, her voice sharp with anger. Are you insane, Mrs. Carter? What does your son's idiocy have to do with my daughter? Ryan's mother could only gasp for air, her face twisted with rage, glaring at us with nothing but hatred. At that moment, one of the neighbors, someone she had once mocked for having a child who couldn't even get into a top-tier university, finally seized their moment. The sheer irony of the situation had them grinning from ear to ear. Huh. Weren't you always looking down on my daughter for only getting into a second-tier college? Well, guess what? At least she did better than your top-scorer son, who ended up at a vocational school. That single remark hit Ryan's mother like a dagger to the heart. She immediately grabbed Ryan by the shoulders, shaking him frantically. I spent 18 years raising you. You were supposed to go to Stanford. How could you be so foolish? Come on, we're going to the Education Bureau right now to change your application back. But Ryan didn't move. Get up. We're going, right now. His mother refused to back down, her voice shrill. Finally, Ryan lifted his head. His face was dark with emotion. Without a word, he shook her off and shouldered past her, walking straight to Lily. Gently, he brushed his fingers over the red marks on her cheek. Ryan's mother let out a wail and collapsed into Ryan's father's arms. His father, holding on to her, looked at their son. This boy who had once been their pride, but now stood taller than his own father, and finally understood. What? What are you doing? Ryan looked down at them, his voice slow and deliberate. I'm already 18. I'm an adult now. His parents stiffened. I just want to go to the same school as the person I love. What's wrong with that? Ryan's voice was eerily calm. If I was able to become the state's top scorer, doesn't that prove that I'm a genius? And a genius's path, he sneered, glancing at everyone around him, is something ordinary people like you would never understand. He clenched his fists. I have my own dreams, my own choices to make. I hate how stagnant my life has been, how I've always done what you told me to. From now on, I don't need you controlling me anymore. His gaze swept over everyone present, stopping briefly on me before shifting away. One day, he said coldly, I'll prove to all of you that I made the right choice. Lily, deeply moved, threw her arms around him. You really changed your application for me? Ryan smirked. Didn't I say I had a surprise for you? What can I say? I like you. Lily sniffled, her eyes glistening. I like you too. Ryan gently ruffled her hair, lowering his voice. That's all that matters then. They don't understand me, but you do, Lily, you always have. I'll have a happy life with you, and we'll prove them all wrong. Hearing their conversation, Ryan's mother finally understood. The only reason Ryan had applied to a vocational college was so he could stay with Lily. Her eyes widened in horror, bloodshot and trembling, but all she could do was watch helplessly as her son held Lily's hand and walked away sweetly. Suddenly, the elevator doors opened. The same delivery guy from earlier poked his head out. Oh, one more package. Almost forgot about this. He handed me another envelope, then gave me a thumbs up. Stanford's admission letter, girl, you're incredible. Ryan turned sharply at the mention of my name, his expression flickering with shock. Meanwhile, Ryan's mother collapsed to the floor, her voice catching in her throat as she let out an incoherent chuckle. My parents immediately surrounded me with joy. Without Ryan taking that last slot, I had indeed made it. Stanford's computer science program had accepted me as the final student from our state. Ryan's decision to change his application for Lily spread quickly among our classmates. Soon enough, even the media caught wind of it. A reporter even interviewed him. On camera, Ryan confidently held Lily's hand and declared, "As long as I can be with Lily, I'll never regret my choice." Lily smiled smugly, leaning against his shoulder. Our class group chat exploded. Holy crap, he really threw away his future for Lily? Damn, Lily hit the jackpot. Jackpot, this is insane. Who gives up Stanford for a no-name school? Hey, let's respect his choice, all right? He said he's a genius. Us mere mortals wouldn't understand. On the night of our graduation dinner, Ryan and Lily were the undeniable center of attention. Everyone whispered about them. Even our homeroom teacher seemed to want to say something, but just let out a long sigh instead. I was sitting quietly with my desk mate, chatting in low voices, when Ryan suddenly grabbed my arm and yanked me out of my chair. "Rainey, are you that shameless?" The entire room fell silent as Ryan glared at me with undisguised hostility. I yanked my arm free and frowned. "What the hell are you talking about?" Ryan's face darkened. "That day, after I got home, I finally figured it out. It was you. You were jealous that I was with Lily, so you deliberately ratted me out to my mom about my application, didn't you? Not only that, but you also spread it all over our class group chat." His voice was filled with rage. "Rainey, are you really that obsessed with me?" I was so angry, I actually laughed. "Are you insane?" My tone was cold. "Your mom found out because she received your admission letter, didn't she? She made such a huge scene that the entire neighborhood was talking about it. Besides, you were the one who willingly went on national TV and told the whole world. So how is it surprising that our classmates found out?" I let out a sharp laugh and crossed my arms. "You want to blame me for something I had nothing to do with? Get lost, Ryan." His face twisted in disbelief, and he staggered back a step. My desk mate smirked and chimed in. "Yeah, you changed your own application. What? Now you're embarrassed people are talking about it?" Even our homeroom teacher sighed deeply. "Ryan, if you regret your decision, you can retake the exams next year. That would still be better than attending a vocational college." But before he could finish, Ryan cut him off. "Stay out of my business. None of you understand what I want." His eyes burned with stubborn pride. "I was the state's top scorer. Even at a vocational school, I'll still be more successful than any of you." With that, he grabbed Lily's hand and stormed off. They hopped onto his motorcycle, and before leaving, Lily stuck out her tongue at us, a silent taunt, as if she was proudly saying, "See, no matter what you say, he'll always choose me." Soon, September arrived. I stepped through the gates of Stanford, finally achieving my dream of attending an elite university. Because I had set my goals early, my college life was packed. I spent my days attending classes, coding, working on projects in the open-source community, refining my resume, assisting professors in research labs, and even spending vacations participating in programming competitions. 4 years passed in the blink of an eye. During my senior year winter break, I returned home. That was when I unexpectedly ran into Ryan. In his freshman year, he had enrolled in that vocational school, where he had, unsurprisingly, become the center of attention. Ryan had received a large scholarship and, together with Lily, had become one of the most talked-about figures in their school's literature department. He was quite proud of this. During the summer before college, after his infamous interview aired, people online criticized him mercilessly, calling him delusional. Seizing the opportunity, Lily created a social media account titled "Top Scorer and His Girlfriend" to document their daily lives. They started making money through their online presence and soon rented an apartment together off campus. At first, Ryan still had the intention of focusing on his studies. However, Lily had zero interest in academics. She spent her days skipping classes, hanging out with her delinquent friends, frequenting bars, karaoke lounges, and gaming arcades. Every night, she came home drunk, often escorted back by those same sleazy friends, their hands lingering on her as they helped her inside. This led to frequent arguments between Ryan and Lily. Stop controlling me. I never liked studying in the first place, Lily snapped at him one night. Didn't you hate being controlled by your parents? So why are you trying to control me now? Ryan had no response to that. The environment at his vocational school was chaotic. Ryan, being one of the few students who actually paid attention in class, was seen as an outcast and frequently mocked by his peers. Eventually, he gave up. Instead of studying, he started following Lily's lead, skipping classes, partying, drinking. He blended into the crowd. They only crammed before exams during finals week. During his first semester, Ryan was initially nervous before the exams. But when the results came out, he realized that after only a few days of studying, he had ranked first in his major. This made him even more complacent. When an easy path is laid out before you, it's hard not to take it. As the coursework became more demanding, last-minute cramming was no longer enough. Ryan's expectations for himself gradually lowered, from wanting to be the top student to simply passing. But instead of feeling ashamed, he flaunted it. Only idiots keep working hard, he bragged on social media. College isn't that serious. As long as you don't fail, you're fine. Over the next 4 years, Ryan's mother initially refused to accept reality. She kept nagging him to retake the exams and go to a better school. But Ryan never came home during breaks and eventually cut off contact with his family altogether, using it as leverage to force their acceptance. In the end, his mother gave in. And this year, for the first time in 4 years, Ryan finally came home. After not seeing each other for so long, we barely recognized each other. Ryan had gained weight, his figure bloated, his posture slouched, his neck craned forward. A tattoo of Lily's initials was inked on his arm. His eyes were sunken with dark circles, and he had a cigarette dangling from his lips. The scholarly aura he once carried at 18 was completely gone, replaced by a greasy, washed-up look. Meanwhile, during my years at Stanford, I had used my spare time to learn about skincare, fashion, and fitness. I had developed a proper beauty routine, worked out regularly, and sculpted my figure. From a once plain and average girl, I had transformed into someone others would call genuinely attractive. When Ryan saw me, I didn't miss the flicker of astonishment in his eyes. Before I could say anything, Lily immediately stepped between us, her expression wary. Years of partying, drinking, and sleep deprivation had taken a toll on her looks. Her once pure, doll-like features were now gaunt and exhausted, her skin dull, her deep nasolabial lines making her appear older than her age. Instead of looking youthful, she now had a slightly bitter, aged look. We ended up sharing the same taxi home from the train station. Halfway through the ride, Lily suddenly grabbed my wrist, her eyes locked onto my bracelet. It was a Bulgari bracelet, worth over $10,000. Lily's gaze sharpened. How the hell could you afford this? It must be fake, right? I glanced at her indifferently. Over the past few years, I had interned at a prestigious tech company while still in college. On top of that, I had accumulated earnings from scholarships and research projects. I had already saved up over $200,000. Buying a bracelet like this was nothing to me, but seeing the blatant jealousy in Lily's eyes, I decided to humor her. Yeah, totally fake. Got it for $10 at a street stall. Lily immediately smirked in triumph. I knew it. There's no way you could afford a real one. Just then, Ryan, who was sitting in the front seat, answered a call. From his tone, it was clear it was his mother. Mom, don't worry. This time I'll definitely pass the grad school entrance exam. I swear I'll get into Stanford. From his words, I instantly understood Ryan was trying to turn his life around. So, Ryan had been aiming to get into Stanford for graduate school. This year, he had just finished taking the entrance exam. Before getting out of the taxi, he winked at me and said, "See you at Stanford, Rainey." I curled my lips into a half-smile, showing no emotion, then pulled my suitcase and walked upstairs. During winter break, the Carter household seemed unusually harmonious. After Ryan returned home, his mother busied herself, proudly showing off to everyone in the neighborhood. My son, the top scorer, is finally home. This time, he's definitely getting into Stanford for grad school, she boasted, holding her head high. Then, with a smug smile, she turned to another neighbor. I heard your daughter is going for a second-tier master's program? What's the point? She might as well just stay home and have kids. On the day grad school exam results were released, Ryan's mother woke him up early, practically dragging him out of bed. "Check it, son. Let's see how high you scored." Ryan, clearly annoyed, pushed her away, sat up shirtless, and grabbed his phone. He entered his exam credentials, ID number, and tapped the search button. A few seconds later, a piercing scream erupted from inside the room. Ryan's mother, trembling, clutched the wall for support. "What? How did you only get 200-something points?" Ryan's hand shook as he held his phone. His face paled. Reaching for a cigarette, he took a deep drag and then snapped, "Shut up." His voice was strained, his expression twitching. Then, almost like he was convincing himself, he muttered under his breath, "I was the state's top scorer. I was supposed to have a bright future." That same day, the girl Ryan's mother had mocked 4 years ago for only getting into a second-tier university came knocking at my door. She smiled shyly and told me that she had also taken the grad school entrance exam this year. Her results had just come out, and she had been accepted into Stanford. She had come to ask me for advice on Stanford's curriculum. I warmly welcomed her in. Hard work is the wisest investment one can make. When winter break ended, I returned to campus. Through brief phone calls with my parents, I learned that Ryan had failed the grad school entrance exam and was now job hunting. At first, he scoffed at the idea. Finding a job? How hard could it be? I was the top scorer in the state. Then reality hit him hard. With a degree in literature, job prospects were already slim. But what made things worse was his attitude. No matter how small the role was, he demanded a monthly salary of $10,000. Even for entry-level office jobs, he acted as if he was above them. Naturally, no one hired him. Some HR managers, after hearing the name of his low-tier college, didn't even bother letting him finish his introduction before cutting the interview short. "Sorry, we prioritize candidates from top-tier universities. But I was the state's top scorer," he argued. The HR rep chuckled. "And you still graduated from a low-tier vocational school." Throughout the entire spring, Ryan went from one interview to the next, only to be repeatedly rejected. He spent his days riding the subway, clutching his worn-out backpack, questioning his life choices. It was only then that he finally understood the damage caused by his reckless application choices and wasted college years. But he quickly convinced himself otherwise. "So what? I still have Lily." Ryan remembered their old social media account, the one Lily had created, top scorer and his girlfriend. During the summer after high school, they had made a few $1,000s from it. Since their content had been inactive for a long time, Ryan decided to restart it. However, their new videos flopped. Each clip barely got a few hundred views, sometimes even less. Frustrated, Ryan posted a rant on social media, blaming the platform for not giving him enough exposure. One of his followers left a comment, "To be honest, your content is just the same old top scorer thing over and over. Your videos are long and boring with zero editing. In today's fast-paced short video era, no one has the patience to sit through them." Ryan immediately blocked the commenter. Then, he had another brilliant idea. He remembered his high school glory days and launched a live stream titled, 2024 State's Top Scorer Solves College Entrance Exam Questions, Live. At first, people actually tuned in. However, when young students eagerly held up their test papers and asked him to explain solutions, Ryan froze. He realized that he had forgotten everything. 4 years had passed, and the exam formats and question styles had changed. He hesitated, stammered, his face turning red with embarrassment. Finally, without another word, he ended the stream. Those who had once followed Ryan's story could only let out a sigh. Soon, June arrived. I graduated from Stanford with honors and transitioned seamlessly into a full-time position at the prestigious tech company where I had interned for the past 2 years. In my previous life, it had taken me several job hops before landing here, but this time I had secured the role immediately after graduation. Because of my prior experience, my department head had great trust in my abilities and frequently introduced me to senior executives and important clients. "This is Rainey Carter, a Stanford graduate. She's highly capable." With my department head's support, I joined a new billion-dollar project team right after graduation, giving me the perfect opportunity to make my mark. As for Ryan, I heard that he had finally come to terms with reality and found a low-paying office job earning $2,000 a month alongside Lily. What I didn't expect was that his office happened to be near my company. One evening after work, I stopped by a shopping mall after dinner. I walked into a luxury boutique, planning to buy a handbag for my mom. Coincidentally, I ran into Ryan and Lily. Lily, holding a cup of cheap milk tea, stood outside the store window, staring longingly at the display bags. Inside, a sales associate was politely handing me the bag I had just chosen. Ryan stood behind her, clutching an old canvas bag. When he noticed me, his expression flickered with a mix of emotions. I paid for the bag and stepped out of the store, only for Lily to suddenly grab my arm. "You," she hissed. "That bag, it's real, isn't it? And that bracelet you wore last time, that was real too." I frowned and pulled my arm away. "Don't touch me." A sales associate inside the store noticed Lily's aggressive behavior and immediately called security. Surrounded by security guards, Lily turned to Ryan and shouted, "I want that bag too. If Rainey can buy it, why can't I?" Ryan rubbed his temples, visibly frustrated. "We need to save money for our wedding. You said you wouldn't control me. I want this bag." In the end, Ryan maxed out his bank card and even took out an installment loan just to buy Lily the handbag she wanted. Lily beamed with satisfaction. Ryan, however, stared at his phone screen, his account balance in red. His face reflected nothing but exhaustion. I merely stood from a distance, watching. How ironic. In my past life, Ryan and I had earned millions together, living in luxury, and yet, he still wasn't satisfied. His heart had always longed for Lily. I wanted to ask him now, was he happy with his life? Lily didn't last long in her office job. Her bad attitude led to a confrontation with the boss's wife, which resulted in both her and Ryan getting fired. They started job hunting again. But without their status as fresh graduates, they faced even harsher rejections. One after another, they were turned away. An entire year passed, and neither of them managed to find stable employment. Eventually, they gave up. They spent their days lying around in their cramped rental apartment, ordering takeout and occasionally mooching meals off the shady gangsters they had befriended at bars. Those so-called friends weren't exactly law-abiding citizens. One day, they proposed something exciting to Ryan and Lily. Lily, ever eager for a thrill, immediately agreed. Neither of them expected that exciting meant armed robbery. That night, Ryan watched as their friends sped through the city on motorcycles, mugging people in the dark alleys. It was a terrifying first experience for him, but Lily clapped in delight, counting the stolen cash over and over again. At first, Ryan was terrified. He barely left the apartment, but constantly fearing that the police would show up at their door. But then, a week passed, then a month. Nothing happened. No consequences. Then one night, the landlord knocked on their door, demanding overdue rent. Ryan put on a helmet, swung his leg over the motorcycle, and looked at Lily. "Let's go rob someone." They chose a street where the security cameras were broken. 3 a.m. A lone woman wearing a mask walked under the dim glow of a street lamp. The motorcycle engine rumbled in the silent night. Ryan's hands were clammy on the handlebars, adrenaline surging through his veins. His vision blurred, his head spun, his ears rang. Everything felt surreal. Then, Lily reached out to snatch the woman's bag. A piercing scream shattered the night. "Help! Robbery! Help!" Ryan hadn't expected the woman to struggle so violently. She even sank her teeth into Lily's arm, biting down hard. Seeing Lily injured, Ryan lost it. He jumped off the motorcycle and began kicking and punching the woman furiously. The woman cried out in pain and finally let go of Lily's arm. Then, suddenly, something caught her eye. Her pupils contracted sharply. She stopped resisting. Bang! 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 The sound of fists pounding into flesh, blood splattered everywhere. Ryan felt like he couldn't stop. It wasn't until Lily dug her fingers deep into his skin and yanked him back that he finally snapped out of it. His whole body was drenched in sweat. Even his helmet had fallen off during the struggle. He took a shaky breath, then ordered Lily, "Take her bag." Then, with trembling fingers, he pulled off the woman's mask. The world went silent. Ryan's eyes widened in horror. He stood frozen for several seconds before finally muttering in disbelief. "Mom?" Ryan's mother had traveled all the way to this unfamiliar city to visit her son. To save money, she had taken the night train. She never expected to be robbed and brutally beaten by her own child. She remained unconscious in the hospital. Ryan sat at her bedside crying uncontrollably. Lily held his hand and whispered, "It's okay. At least you still have me." Ryan had heard these words so many times before. When he threw away his future by applying to a no-name college, he convinced himself it was okay, because he still had Lily. When he skipped classes and spent his days partying in bars and arcades, he told himself it didn't matter, because he still had Lily. When he saw me graduate from Stanford, start a successful career in tech, and live a bright, promising life while he struggled to find a job, he comforted himself. At least he still had Lily. But this time, hearing those words again, he felt exhausted. Silently, he pushed Lily's hand away. The hospital started urging him to pay the medical bills. Ryan desperately tried to borrow money. He even begged Lily for help. She agreed on the surface. But that night, through a thin wall, he overheard her sneering on the phone. "Yeah, I'm totally over him. What else does he even have? Just a washed-up top scorer who can't even find a job. He's pathetic." Ryan stormed into the room. Lily gasped, dropping her phone. Before she could react, Ryan grabbed her by the throat and slammed her onto the bed. She struggled violently, her hands and feet flailing in the air. His eyes were bloodshot as he whispered, word by word, "You promised you'd stay with me forever, so come to hell with me." Ryan had completely lost it. I had no idea how he found me. In the middle of a downpour, he stood outside my company building, completely drenched, his eyes locked onto the company logo above. In my past life, Ryan had graduated from Stanford's computer science program and landed a job here straight out of school. He had once stood where I am now, with a bright future ahead of him. His lips twitched uncontrollably. Was he laughing? Or crying? A raindrop slid down his cheek. I was on my way back to the office with a fresh cup of coffee, preparing for a meeting. Then I heard him call my name. "Rainey." "Why?" I turned and met his twisted, hate-filled gaze. "Why didn't you try to change my application this time?" Then he charged at me with a knife. Crash! My coffee cup slipped from my hand. The dark liquid mixed with rainwater, swirling down into the city's drainage. I pinned him to the ground and yelled for security. In this life, I had taken up fitness training in college and even learned judo in my free time. Ryan, who had wasted years indulging in alcohol and pleasure, was no match for me. I leaned down close to his ear and whispered, "What's wrong? Isn't this the life you wanted?" Ryan stared at me, his eyes filled with disbelief. You've been reborn too?" I simply smiled. "In my past life, I convinced you to change your application, and you tried to kill me. In this life, I let you make your own choices, and you still want to kill me." I tilted my head and asked coldly, "Ryan, don't you think there's something seriously wrong with you? I don't owe you anything." By now, a crowd had gathered. My colleagues rushed over to help. Suddenly, Ryan shoved me away with all his strength and took off, disappearing into the heavy rain like a desperate fugitive. One of my coworkers approached me, concern evident in their voice. "Are you okay? Do you still want to go to the interview later?" I ran a hand through my slightly damp hair and smiled. "I'm fine." By now, I had been promoted to a team lead at my company, and my annual salary had risen to $600,000. Under my leadership, our projects had expanded significantly, so much so that we were constantly recruiting new talent. A thick stack of resumes sat neatly on my desk. Graduates from Cambridge, Harvard, Stanford, Tsinghua, Peking University, Zhejiang University. From master's degree holders to PhDs, we had candidates of every caliber. Ryan used to look down on academic credentials, but what he never understood was that society can be brutally unforgiving. Without the right qualifications, some people don't even get a chance to enter the game. Later, my mother told me that Ryan had been arrested. It turned out that after he killed Lily with his own hands, he had faked an identity card and returned to his hometown, working as a food delivery driver. One day, while making a delivery, Ryan unexpectedly arrived at our old high school. At first, he didn't recognize it. Over the years, the school had undergone expansions and renovations, and even the main entrance had changed completely. Impatient, he tugged at his damp, sweat-stained delivery uniform and scolded the student for taking too long to pick up the order. But just as he was about to step back onto his motorcycle, a familiar sound rang out from behind him. The school bell. The same bell he had heard every day for years. Ryan froze. It was June again. The air thick with summer heat, the shrill cries of cicadas filling the atmosphere, and through the open windows of the classrooms, the sound of students reading aloud drifted into the courtyard. Something inside him snapped. He jumped off his motorcycle and staggered forward, bumping into several people as he rushed toward the school gates. His hands trembled violently as he pressed them against the cold, black iron bars. Slowly, he removed his sweat-soaked helmet. Through the gaps in the gate, his eyes locked onto the school's Hall of Honor display board. There, on the glowing red banner, his name was still there. Ryan Carter, 732 points, 2024 state's top scorer. The photo attached was of his 18-year-old self. Back then, he had been full of ambition, his eyes shining with youthful confidence. In the picture, he was smiling shyly, lips pressed together, his future seemingly limitless. The security guard at the gate noticed him. At first, he simply found it odd, a young man standing there, crying uncontrollably, as if he had just recalled every regret in life all at once. Then, as he took a closer look, his expression shifted. Something about this man looked eerily familiar. Not just because his face matched the wanted criminal they had seen on TV recently, but because he was the same person on that honor board. When the police arrived, Ryan didn't run. He didn't resist. Instead, he just laughed. A dry, hollow, self-deprecating laugh. He laughed at his own pathetic life. In the end, he was sentenced to life in prison for murder. But by then, none of it had anything to do with me anymore.